Okay, welcome everyone to another video in which we're going to look at weird and wonderful hardware. Custom hardware that's been modified to include all kinds of wonderful gadgetry. This particular machine, if I switch over to the other camera for a moment, this machine, if I just turn this one off here. There we go, this particular machine, if we have a look, we'll turn it off actually. This isn't the keyboard that originally came with it. This is a rather nicer looking keyboard, but anyway, we'll unplug it and we'll have a little guided tour of what's what before we start. There we go. Undo that, and that, and there we are. Note, anti-static mat underneath. It's very, very important. Now, I don't want this to fall out, so I'm going to have to hold on to this here. Let's run over what this machine's got inside of it. Does this camera need realigned again? Let's just maneuver that a little bit. Okay. So here we've got 130XE, 4-chip design, later model, same motherboard you'd find in a 800XE, as they were sold late on in Europe, I believe. Got two of them, and one of them has an identical board to this one. This belongs to Atari age-user Elastic from, I think, is it Belgium? So what this machine has in it, as you can see, it's got ultimate 1MB. It's got Sophia, the DVI version of Sophia. It's got, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's Zaxon's 3.5-inch XF551 clone floppy disk controller board, and finally, last but not least, it has a dual port MIDI controller, SIO to MIDI, that is to say. Now if I hold on to this so it doesn't fall out, in fact why not have it the right way up. So this drive isn't actually mounted yet, so let's look at it from another angle. So we look at it from the back here. Right, on the back of the machine we've got our monitor jack, the original monitor jack, power jack of course. We've got two MIDI ports here which occupy the space vacated by the RF modulator. So this machine's lost composite video, that's an important point. And we've got the DVI connector for Sophia here. You can see the bottom of the drive poking out through the casing. Now, Elastic started this machine himself. I'm sure you won't mind me telling you the story behind it. And he had some problems when it came to removing the, I think it was the OS-ROM and the MMU in order to fit the ultimate 1MB. So the machine came over here, but whipped those out for him, put some sockets in, machine went back, and he got on with it because he was keen to do most of the work himself, and he was doing a pretty competent job, I have to say. But he came a cropper with some custom ribbon cables for the ultimate 1MB because he wanted to route them a certain way. I can't remember where he was going to propose to put this board, but he had problems with them. The board stopped working. He wasn't sure what to do, so he sent the machine back here so I could have a look at it. And there was a few problems, a few little accidents, I suppose, that had happened along the way. And he had a sort of a list of requirements, or sort of ideal requirements that he wanted to attain, one of which was to actually keep the shield, which I talked him out of, because I think you can probably imagine having the shield on this machine would be rather difficult. The other thing was that he wasn't too sure where he wanted to put the MIDI ports, and since this DVI connector, I'd already cut the hole for this, so that was kind of set in stone in a way, as was the position of this. The position of the Ultimate board, the controller board, kind of open to debate, and the MIDI board. So I couldn't fit the Ultimate 1MB in the usual position, which is right in the corner here, right above the power jack. Couldn't be done because of this. So I moved it forward. I found a nice little spot to put this here. It's actually a very good spot. It's right above the memory that's already on the board. It could work on the other machines as well, and the ribbon cables are very, very short, so it's possibly worth remembering. So having installed this further forward and removed the RF modulator, which obviously you'd need to do to get this in here, it occurred to me that why don't I cut out a chunk of the motherboard. You can't really see it here. I'm not going to start pulling the machine apart because it has to be shipped back tomorrow, and if I break it now I've got problems. But I actually cut out a square of the motherboard here and glued in the SIO to MIDI board where the RF modulator used to be. You can probably see that reasonably clearly there. If I'll give you another view from the front, maybe a little easier to see what's going on. So it's just a little cutout. The board has two MIDI jacks on the back, so you can probably visualize how the thing's sitting in the little cutout. Other problems I'll run through. We had replaced these cables, the harding connectors, bit of the dust when I was taking those cables apart, so we've got new connectors there. We had a broken trace under the GTI chip, which was repaired. There was also an obstruction in pin 40 of the DVI Sophia board, which I couldn't get out, so I had to replace the pin. I didn't want to replace the whole socket, managed to replace just the pin, so then we could get the GTI chip in. But the GTI chip had a couple of bent pins, one of which was the one that had got buckled when it went in that hole, so I had to replace two pins on the GTI, just wiggled them off and soldered new pins on. CPU had some problems with bent pins. I don't know what had gone on there. It had kind of Bisto gravy kind of flux residue underneath it. It looked a bit of a mess. I don't know what had gone on in the past. So we took the CPU off, straightened the pins out, fixed one pin that was actually sheared off in situ in the socket, well in the board. Put a socket under the CPU, fixed that up. So yeah, everything kind of took shape. A couple of other things I can't even remember now. Replaced a few capacitors, but I cut one of the capacitors open when I was cutting the board. I think that's it. So that was that, and then it came to testing this floppy board last week. So it took, what with cutting the board apart and having to figure out where to put all this stuff and fixing this board and things, it took a while. So we're about 6 or 7 days into it now, and it came to not solid days, you know, intermittent days. Came to test this at the weekend, and the machine was dead. And the machine was suddenly dead, and I thought, oh hello. I had tested the machine, it was working fine up until what I had done without since the previous test was add this wiring. So this wiring loom here, it taps off SIO signals. Notice that I didn't solder to the back of the connector. I soldered to the vias that were intended for the caps, the smoothing capacitors on the various SIO signals. They're not on the board, so I took the solder out the holes and soldered to those instead. Handy hint if you want to tap SIO signals on a board that has positions for those caps, which you don't need. So that's what I'd done since. I kind of wondered if maybe there was a short developed on the board. It was completely without any kind of clock signal, no signs of life. Really struggled. First thing I thought was, well, we'll change the master crystal. I immediately suspected Freddy, or the lesser to a lesser extent the crystal. Freddy constantly dies on these things. Very, very fragile. But nevertheless, anyway, put a socket under Freddy. Freddy's fine. Change the crystal. Didn't make any difference. Still dead. I went all over the board. Anyway, eventually, I selected an identical board from one of those 800XEs because there are so many different variants of oscillator or crystal in this corner. This layout is completely different to a lot of the other machines. This is a very late revision board, and I'd made a really stupid mistake when I tried to replace the crystal early on in the troubleshooting. I think I had taken, I can't really remember because I was in such a desperate state. I was really fed up with the amount of work that had gone into this thing, and it had died. Anyway, I think I probably selected an XL master crystal, which is a completely different frequency, of course, because we've got Freddy on this chip, which has a frequency divider on it to provide the master clock. No point at all in putting an XL crystal in there. It's probably what I did, therefore tick the crystal off the list, and then later on it became apparent that, you know, when you've eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however unlikely, must be the case. Well, it had to be the crystal, and I decided to swap the crystal from the 800XE and put it in here. Identical crystal, identical part. Hooray! Maker's brand on it. And it worked. Magically it works. It was the crystal all along. Very unusual for the crystal to fail us. Readers of Atari Age will be able to entertain themselves with a discussion of that fact. But anyway, it works now. So this isn't the crystal that I took from the 800XE. This is a crystal, a smaller form, smaller package crystal, which I got, I think, from Wolfram years ago, probably. Maybe Jürgen sent me some. We can't figure out who I got these crystals from, but anyway, that's probably a megahertz. Megahertz is probably the guy I bought that one from. Okay, so it works now, and now we get to test it out. I've still got a couple of tiny little things to do on it before it goes tomorrow, so I thought I'd jump in right now and give you a quick tour of this interesting little machine. So you've had a look at the board. I'm going to put the keyboard back in now, and I'm going to power it up. Now, for me, the most interesting thing, because I'm not a MIDI device user, although I'm a musician, I'd never ever used MIDI devices before. So what the most interesting thing for me, obviously I'm very familiar with the Ultimate 1 megabyte, but what interests me specifically is the floppy drive, which I think is great. And it's even better than I thought it would be, actually. It's a lot of fun. I'm not a big fan of using floppy drives nowadays because they're slow, but it is a lot of fun. So if we switch to the other camera so you can see the screen, let's power the machine up and hope it starts. I hope it doesn't blow up or anything. Hope we get a video signal if the thing's connected properly. There we go, it's going to warm up. There we go, we've got a picture finally because the TV's warmed up. And now the audio, I've had to have a bit of a fart around to get the audio off this because I don't have a cable to tap the audio off the legacy jack. There's no headphone jack or anything. The owner didn't ask for that, so I haven't done it. But he said he's going to tap the audio off the legacy audio jack. Now, in order to do that, because this TV will only accept audio on a 3.5-inch jack when the input source is DVI, and I want the input source to be DVI because I want to show off the Sophia picture, which, as you can see, is very nice. I can even twist the monitor around a little bit for you there. I'll probably reposition the camera even. There we go. Yes, so I've had to run the legacy video into the AV capture dongle just so I can tap the audio off, and the audio is coming straight out of the PC speakers in a monitor fashion, so you should be able to hear the system audio. Right, so let's test this disk drive first. So this disk drive set to act as drive 1. It's got a 3.5-inch floppy drive in it. And now what I couldn't figure out at first, you see a huge 716,000 byte test file here. When I went into the SPARTA-DOS formatter and tried to format this disk as 720k, which is obviously what I immediately wanted to do, because you want to run this at 720k, don't you? I mean, 80 tracks per side. I was getting a 80 track double-sided, that's it. I was getting this warning here. Now this insert disk, there we go, drive can't run ultra speed, that's fine. Invalid parameters. Now this is a fairly old build of SPARTA-DOS X, but I don't remember this happening with my 720k 3.5-inch mechanism modded XF551. Haven't figured out what the problem is there yet. So if I accept that with yes, it formatted the disk, but I couldn't be sure from that whether the percom frame that had been returned by the drive was the same as what had been sent to the drive. So was the drive actually formatting an 80 tracks per side, or is it formatting at 40 tracks per side? I couldn't tell. So the way I figured out whether it actually had formatted at 720k 80 tracks per side was to subsequently copy a 700 kilobyte test file with random data, copied it via SIO to PC onto the floppy disk, and then copied it back from the floppy disk back to the PC and inspected it in HXD and did a file compare with the original, and they matched. Therefore the drive definitely does run 720k, otherwise the DOS would have started to overwrite other sectors with the higher data sectors as it was copying the stuff across. So yes, it does run 720k. I don't understand why it returns that error. Maybe if I update SPARTA-DOS X, that'll go away, because this build of SPARTA-DOS X is probably ancient, since the ultimate 1 megabyte hasn't been updated yet. Anyway, I'm going to let this format, so we should have a 720k file system, SPARTA-DOS file system. There we go. And we can copy, I think on drive B I've got a mirrored volume. Yes, I have. So copy B rwtest.com and copy that onto. This is SPARTA-DOS X. It's oldish. It's not that old, but it's old. So we'll see what happens when we update that. Right, so we run this test. I didn't think it would be this much fun having a 3.5-inch drive inside of the Atari, but it is. I'm sure Bob Woolley would testify to that, because he's got a lot of 1200 XLs with 3.5-inch floppy drives on the side. I don't know offhand how he managed to do that, but I'm assuming he's got some sort of controller board rigged up. Alright, so we've got reasonable speed. Hopefully it'll be a bit faster reading back. But take a moment anyway to appreciate the gorgeous video quality of Sophia DVI. I don't know if this aspect ratio is absolutely correct. It looks about right for PAL, but I think it was designed for 1280 by 1024. Would that be right? So this should work now. Right, okay. And we want drive C, which is temporarily where I've got the thing mounted. So XU flash. I'll use X because it loads quicker. So this is via SIO to PC and respect. So let's do the whole ROM, because we want to get rid of the old Spartanos and whatnot. Let's go for that one. Yes, let's go for that one. And we go straight to the new firmware. So let's set the clock. Yeah, let's set the clock. It's 2019. Yeah, U-Flash should pick up the new firmware after doing that. Oh god, this program, you grow to hate things after a while. It's interesting. It is interesting. Well, they just get so complicated. It's just ugh. Go backwards there. Control and enter to go backwards. It's about probably about there, something like that. Right. We don't need. Well, we can put. We haven't got the side attached. For now, we'll enable this. Yes. Turn that on. Do we need it? Who knows? Cold boot select. Remote one. Colors. What do they look like on the DVI? They just look nice and sharp, as you would expect. Have we got I/O sound? We'll have all of I/O sound. You can turn it off if you doesn't like it. There we go. There's no Covox on the board. Can't be detected in software, so I can't grey it out. Everything looks good. So we could have Altera Basic, which is better. Yeah, that's better. Right. There we go. So that sounds a little bit slow to me. Where are the pills? Where are the pills? Where are they? Where are the pills? Where are my bloody pills? Okay, and we're back. As usual when recording these videos, I managed to discover a bug in the firmware, and this one was related to high speed detection in the XF551. So let's flash the update. Alright. This other one concerned... Yeah, that seems to work better now. This boot drive thing here wasn't being grayed out if the hard disk was off. If the boot drive was anything other than... or rather, the drive 1 redirect. If this was anything other than drive 1 and the hard drive was turned off, the redirect was still enabled. Oh god. Oh, it never ends. Where are the pills? So turn that off again. Reboot. No quates changed, so there should be no need to restart the machine. That sounds a bit better. That's a more familiar sound. That sounds like 56 kilobits per second. That's better. Would I actually use a floppy drive in a machine like this? I don't know. Probably not on an everyday basis because I've got used to this now. There we go. So we could do lots of fun stuff as well with the side cartridge attached, I suppose, just to show that this still works. So if we go in to the BIOS, we can turn on the hard disk. We can set that to boots a bit more quickly. There we are. Now if we go into, let's say we go into the loader and try and copy data to and from an ATR, that's like what? Sparta. And we'll mount that on D2. And then I think we can go boot Sparta DOS X. So we should have a floppy on drive 1. Right, and this stuff on drive 2. So we could copy x32d.dos, rather b x32d.dos to drive 1. Great sounds, artificial PBI mounted ATR sounds. Great stuff. Sounds really good with it. Let's do some more of this stuff. DOS. Copy star.com. Paste star.com. DOS. Let's get some of this good stuff. Okay, so now we can do an RPM test. .300 RPM. There we go. So anyway, this we'll take this back out now, and we can go back and turn this off since you won't be using it for the moment. There we go. Right. So yes. So anyway, this is the machine. I hope you found this one interesting. It's going to get packed up today and sent back once I've just double checked some connections on the MIDI board, because I can't test that. It's been quite fun. It's been tricky, to say the least, just because of the number of issues, some of which were foreseen, some of which weren't. But yes, if you enjoyed this video, I can make more along similar lines. I hope to do so, and I'm going to make some more videos about this firmware as well when time allows. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you're not already subscribed to the channel and you'd like to see more stuff along these lines, please consider subscribing and click the bell if you want to be notified of new uploads when they come along. And please share the video as well, something I don't often ask or mention. If you share the video on social media, that's bound to improve exposure for the channel a little bit, and that's got to help as we climb ever so slowly towards about 700 subscribers. Until the next one, thanks for watching, and bye bye for now.